In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the one God to whom all praise is due, the Lord of the worlds, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, to whom praise is due forever. We thank Allah for blessing us with a divine leader, a divine teacher, and a divine guide in the personage of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, the messenger of Allah. In their names, I greet you, my brothers and sisters, with the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for coming out this afternoon to hear what we have to say. You could have been home in a hot house, but I'm glad that you traded that hot house for this cool auditorium. This is a very nice place, and it's a very wonderful location, and it is a place that we intend to make a lot of use of in the future in aiding us and our people to understand better the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. A subject was chosen for me today by some of the sisters who worked very hard to get some of you out. And that subject that was chosen, which of course I agreed with, deals with the question of integration versus separation. Which way should we go? Integration versus separation. Which way should we go? And when you say integration, it conjures up a lot of the pictures for some of us of the 60s, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and so many of our black leaders and a host of young men and women went into the streets and marched for integration. Integrating the public places such as restaurants, hotels, motels, restrooms, etc. Marching, suffering for a voting rights bill, because these wonderful brothers and sisters and these well-meaning leaders of our people felt that it was time that black people share in the promise of America. That promise being liberty and justice for all. That promise being a piece of the economic pie. That promise being full-fledged citizenship with all of the rights and privileges of that citizenship. On the other hand, there was the principal teacher of separation, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. We know that before the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the great and Honorable Marcus Garvey advocated separation. We know that Noble Drew Ali also spoke of separation. We know that the Communist Party back in the 20s and 30s also advocated separation. Now, 40 years, nearly 50 years has gone by since the principal advocates of separation stood up. Though separation became a great issue when Abraham Lincoln was on the scene, and when other presidents after him were on the scene, there was this constant battle. Should we stay or should we leave? Should we become a part of the American way of life, or should we, as black people, return to our own self, our own kind, our own people, and become an independent nation? Now we're in 1980. And we have to look at all of these words, and behind these words discover meaning, and behind the meaning discover the intent of the parties who are advocating either way. If the intent of the government in advocating integration is to trick us into believing that our 400-year-old enemy has now become our friend, and that we should forgive and forget and be glad to take part in this great American way of life, then the intent is evil. So the result from such intent can never bring justice to a people who are aggrieved. Now we've got to know not just the word and what it means, but we've got to analyze the motivation as best we can of the government in advocating integration for blacks. Then we have to look at the practicality of both integration or separation. Which will work? And if integration will work, how? If separation will work, how? And then let's come to an equitable agreement on what we shall do. Now I'm going to step over here to the blackboard, but it looks like they don't have any white chalk. So it looks like I can't step over to the board. While they're going to get some chalk, let's look at three words: integration, separation, segregation. When people criticize the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, they say, oh, that man wants segregation. But what is segregation? Segregation is separation of an inferior by a superior. I want to repeat that. Segregation is separation of an inferior by a superior. In our house where we grew up, mother and father told us which entrance to come in. You remember? That is, if we had two entrances to our door or house. Sometimes there was only one, so we had to come in there. But if mother fixed her living room up real pretty and didn't want you messing up her living room, mama would tell you before she went to work, don't go in that living room. These are orders from your superior. And if you venture into that living room with your company, You're going to get it when I come home. In fact, I don't want you having no company in my house when I'm gone. Do you understand? And you always said, yes, yes, I understand, Mom. Yes, Daddy, I understand. They're fine. That's segregation. It's enforced on you by a superior. And you, in that condition, are definitely an inferior. Right? You ain't got no money. You haven't made a way for yourself. You're not bringing no food in the house. So mother has the right to tell you when to come, when to go, and what room you're going to stay in. And if you act up, go to your room and stay there. That's segregation, brother, sister. Mr. Muhammad couldn't be advocating that. That's what white folks set up. Is that right? To set themselves apart from you and me. They were in the superior position. We were in the inferior position. So they set us apart. You go over there. You live on that side of the track. And you better not cross over. Don't come past Cottage Grove. Don't come past State. You niggas didn't hear what I said. Now you're up off of Halstead. Don't come past Halstead. And you better not come past Ashland. But this is the way it's been, right? And every time we moved, we had to pay a price for disobeying the unwritten rule of a man who thinks he's superior, that he put on a people that he has relegated to an inferior position. All right, so we understand segregation. Now, separation is a little different. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad has said to us that separation is a voluntary act done by two equals who realize that they cannot get along in peace. They come to a decision, it's best for us to separate. You go your way, I go mine. Thank you. Now this word integration is a tricky word. Now, what is a whole number called in mathematics? An integer. Is that right? Come on now. Integer is a term that means something that is whole, a whole number. The reason you call a whole number an integer is because that which was whole at one time was a fraction. So when you bring a fraction into a whole number, you have brought it from a part to a whole, and you call that whole an integer. So the word integrate or integration is a word that conveys a similar meaning. That people who are separate, we want to make them whole, so we develop a policy that will bring them together. In mathematics, you find the least common denominator to bring a fraction into a whole number. In politics, you evolve a policy which is really a strategy to bring dissimilar things together into a whole. Is it clear so far? All right, just very good. Brother says, so far it's all right. All right, now, notice I said integration in politics is a policy which indicates a strategy. America is considered the melting pot of the world. Is that right? The Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor has on it, "Give me your tired, your poor." Really not talking to the world at large. It's really talking to Europe. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Send them, the homeless, the tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. The golden door means that America is to represent heaven for European refugees. Do you understand? And if you will agree with me, America represents heaven to European refugees. Did you hear the Republican National Convention on television the other day? If you happen to want to get bored and wanted to look at something, you probably heard Bush, Vanderjack, Reagan, and others talk about their European forebears, some of whom came over here just 60 years ago, some 100 years ago. And he said, who would have thought that the son of an immigrant 60 years ago would be now in the Senate of the United States? Big thing. His father came here poor, a boy 14 years old, and now his son not only has a college degree, a house, a car, but is a senator and has a view toward high national office. Bush, the same. Reagan, the same. America has been a land of opportunity for Italians, for Greeks, for Poles, for Irish, for Russian immigrants. Is that right? For Lithuanians, for Latvians, for Estonians, for Spaniards, for Portuguese, for French people, for Dutch people. They all have come to America, and the policy of the government and the strategy of the government is to minimize their cultural heritage back in Europe and to maximize an American heritage so that they could be integrated into the fabric of what is called American society. So if you notice, though they say Anglo-American, Italian-American, Greek-American, Polish-American, this American, that American, they all feel more akin to America than they do to the land that they are refugees from. Right. Is that right? Come on now. So what does it mean? It means they have successfully been integrated into American society. So the policy of the United States government has worked for all Caucasians. But here is another ingredient. These that have been integrated are of the same racial strain, but of different ethnic backgrounds. Is that right? Yes, sir. Right. They're the same race. That's right. They are all Caucasians. Right. Come on now. That's right. Some a little darker, some a little lighter, some a little blonde, some a little brunette. But they are all the same people.
That's right.
Is that right?
That's right.
All right. But now when it comes to Asiatic people or African people, you got something different now has entered into this. To this very day, the Chinese are not integrated. Would you agree? The Japanese are not integrated, and they don't ask for it. They run their own Chinatown. They run their own Japanese town. Is that right? Their politics runs their neighborhood. They've got their own separate economy inside the main American economy. You never find Chinese marching to get better laws for Chinese people. Come on now. You haven't seen a Japanese march yet. We want better life in America. Don't have that foolishness, brother. Everybody makes their way. Is that right? All right. They understand something that you have yet to understand. They understand that they don't have to be white to get out of the American economy what their unity, their intelligence, their skill will enable them to get to support their own separate identity and their separate community, yet within the body politic of the United States. You and I have not realized yet, due to faulty leadership, that we can maximize our own strength in America and yet be separate from America and grow powerful. We haven't realized that. We feel that the only way to be successful is to get in with white folks, be like white folks, do what pleases white folks, laugh for white folks, dance for them, give your woman to them, send your sons and daughters off to fight for them. You haven't realized how to maximize your own strength in your own vital numbers. But they know your potential power. And they said, we cannot afford segregation no more because the niggas ain't gonna take it. They are too militant now for us to tell them where to go, how to go, when to go. So we got to abandon this as a strategy.
Listen now.
As a policy.
Yes, sir.
We cannot afford to grant them separation and let them build a nation of their own, even though they're big enough to have a nation. We can't let them do this, because if they become an independent nation and join the community of nations and look out in the world market for help from other nations to help them get up on their feet, pretty soon they may join on to our enemies and come against us, because they may remember what our fathers did to their fathers. So we cannot let them go. We must not ever let Negroes, niggers, or colored people even entertain the idea that they should have a nation of their own. That is unthinkable. Don't let them think like that. Make them think that everything that they want, everything that they need, they must seek it from us. So a strategy was evolved into a policy. And that policy became the cry of the government under John F. Kennedy. And it became the cry of the liberal wing of the Democratic Party. And it became the cry of all sick and affected black leaders who have always felt that unless we are approved by white people, we are not approved at all. Unless we get some certificate from them saying, you okay. You're really not okay. So separation is crazy. Separation is absolutely insane if you look at separation from their viewpoint. Separation is madness. How can we make it by ourselves? This is our black leaders. Oh, I wouldn't want to live in any place where they're all Negroes. I mean, you listen to them, brother. Say, if I don't wake up in the morning and see a white face, I know I'm in hell. If I can't get up and ride the subway and see somebody white somewhere, I'm in trouble. I don't want nothing that's all black. I don't want no all black nothing. I mean, there are people that think just like that. Maybe some in here think something like that. But if you do, you'll be all right. You just have a fever. The sun has gotten to you. But we got some spirit of nitre for you that will take that fever away. Right. Now let's look. We want to look at these three from many different viewpoints tonight, this afternoon. And we're going to do it quickly. But I don't want to rush. Because, you know, when I come home to meet with you, you know, I really don't like to rush away. Because we don't see each other that much. And we've got to do something about that. You know. Because I'm spending more time on the East Coast and the West Coast, leaving Chicago, which is the most important city in America, as far as we're concerned. But that's going to change. So I'm going to take a little bit more time, but I want to look at this from just purely physical, political view now. All right? Yes, sir. Now, when Kennedy said this got to be a policy to integrate Negroes, colored folk. We got to get them in. Why get them in? Because somebody's around here preaching to get them out. And if these Negroes ever think in terms of getting out, who's going to fight our wars for us? I mean, we don't need the niggas to work no more because we got machines to do that, but we haven't developed a machine to fight yet. You always need infantry. You always need a foot soldier who will help us. We got to keep our niggas. Look at the policy now. No, sir, it's all right. Kennedy got the Big Six together. You know the Big Six? The Big Six was the NAACP, the Urban League, Roy Wilkins, Whitney Young, James Farmer of CORE at that time, SNCC, and there were a couple more, National Negro Women or something. And they all met at the White House. And they talked about how they were going to get integration, make this thing work. They didn't have time to do it right. So they had to force it. And that's why Governor Faubus and those other recalcitrant governors in Alabama and other places bucked the United States government because the government was racing against time to force a policy on people who had not been prepared. White folks were not prepared to go to the toilet with you. No, they weren't. White folks were not prepared to have you in their hotels and motels. White folk weren't prepared. But you know, they finally saw the profit in it. Say, if we open up our hotels to the niggers, they'll stop sleeping black when they come down here. And we'll be closing down their black businesses and making them more dependent on us. So let's let them in. If they eat in our restaurant, they won't open up a restaurant of their own. If they can shop with us, they won't think about setting up something of their own, so let's open it up for them. And if you go down south now, which most of you are from, you go back down south and see what integration has done to the black business and professional people in the South. It has almost closed down black business. Come on now, is it true? That's right. Integration has destroyed the black institutions of education. In the South, how many of you are from the South? Would you raise your hand? All right. Did you go to high school in the South? How many of you went to high school in the South? Okay. When you were in school, under black teachers, you had to know something about black history on this side of the Atlantic Ocean. Is that right? You had to know something, what they call Negro history. That's right. They drilled that into you in the Southern schools. So what happened was you came up with a degree of pride in the accomplishments of black people, feeling, knowing, and believing that you also could achieve. And even though you left the South and came north, you came north with a spirit to achieve. Right. I'm going up north and I'm going to get something. Right. I'm going up north and I'm going to do something. I'm going up north and I'm going to be something. But that's the way you came because of the education that you received. And in the South, mama and grandmama would always tell you, child, get you an education. If you get the knowledge, they won't be able to hold you down. Now, when you got out of those black high schools, you went to black colleges. And in those black colleges, you learned whatever you learned and became a teacher, some profession. And then you went to the big white universities for your master's and for your doctorate degree if you went that far. But your roots were so strong because of that segregated learning. When they broke up segregation, which kept you separate together but separate in an inferior position, they thought that integration would make you better. But you go back down south now and you'll see that they're going to schools and they have no knowledge of black accomplishment. That isn't even being taught anymore. In southern schools, the black colleges are being systematically closed up or integrated into a major university system. Black hospitals that were flourishing in southern towns are closed up today, and blacks have no medical facilities in most of the major cities of the South, and you are forced now to go into white hospitals to deliver your babies, not knowing whether you're going to come out with a baby or not. Right. You're forced to go to white hospitals for them to experiment on you because you thought integration meant freedom. And you found that integration was a trick. Look now, Whitey has never intended for you to be a full American sharing in the rights and privileges of America. Do you know that now? Do you really know that? Is there anyone here dumb enough in 1980 to believe that white America wants you to be 100% American with all the rights and privileges of every white American? Please stand up. I just want to see somebody that dumb. Because I wouldn't believe it unless I saw it. You can't be that dumb. Nobody. Even though Reagan sounded so nice the other night. Oh boy. He sounded, oh, didn't he? Oh, he was sweet. I mean, that he deserved an Oscar for it. He laid one on the folk that night. He wasn't quite as good as Carter was 4 years ago. Carter laid one on you too. And got 90% of your vote and didn't do nothing for black people. Why? Not because he may not have wanted to. The system is so strong and so well entrenched that no one man can change it. He gets in and they threaten him and he bows and goes along with it. Right. Now, look, integration is a what? Success or failure? Did it fail? Come on.
Yes, sir.
Do you have more under integration or less?
Less.
Are you making more money now or less?
Less.
You have more sense now or less?
Less.
Of course you got more sense now. Don't you say less. You got more because you are wiser through mistakes. But this was not designed, my brother and sister, sincerely. It was designed as a strategy to try to assimilate you into the American way of life on an what we would call a spiritual plane, never real. And that's why you found these words coming up in the vocabulary of the teachers. If these words sound having familiarity, there's a reason. You notice the word black was replaced with minority.
Listen now.
Have you noticed it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No one refers to themselves anymore, I'm black. I am a minority. I listened to Reagan, I think one of them the other night, mentioned white and minorities. White is on one side, off to itself. Minorities is a hodgepodge of whatever you want to throw into it.
Listen, like this.
The language is to reinforce the trick
Right.
that they have set up in what they call integration. So black leaders come up now, they don't want to use the term black. They want to use the term human. We're all human beings.
That's what they say. Listen now.
We're all God's children. I mean, brother, this is a serious thing. Then if you say, I want to stand up for black, immediately they use this word, racist. So that you feel right now ashamed if you want to form an all-black association. Vernon Jarrett used to have a program called Black on Black. Now, it ain't black on black anymore. What's it called? Huh? What is it called? Do you know? The Vernon Jarrett Show. Is that what it's called? Tony Brown used to have a show called Black Journal.
Right.
It's now Tony's Journal. But look, man, you've got to wake up and see that white folks have actually subtly brought you back to the same mind that your fathers had in 1930. You are right back there then when nobody wanted to be called black anymore. When it was sick to refer to yourself as black. We want to say Afro-American, but we even say that real weak.
Right.
So since integration has been advanced as a policy and a strategy, white folks know that it has failed. They don't admit openly its failure, but there's a pullback now from all of the issues that were central to integration, such as busing.
That's right.
We're going to bus you out of your neighborhood and take you to a better school where you can learn. And where is this better school? Wherever white folks are, that's the better school. Now, Whitey is saying, I don't want them niggas in our neighborhood. I ain't busing my white children into no black neighborhood to achieve no racial balance. That's out. And they have gotten so strong now that they have made school boards pull back, the federal government is pulling back, and the mood in the country now is shifting so that even though Reagan is an out and out conservative gone toward right wing, many of the people were disheartened when Bush got the vice presidential nomination because they wanted another man that had a conservative viewpoint, because they don't want no more liberal. Because to be liberal means you want to have social programs that will help you. To be liberal means, in their mind, looking out for blacks and others who seem to be the bloodsuckers on the economy. This is their thinking now. And they don't want nobody that's going to look like they want to be easy with you in terms of the death penalty. Bring back the death penalty. Bring back, we want law and order. They don't want law and order for their lawless, wretched, corrupt governors, senators. They want law and order for poor people, to put you in prison for long term for stealing a loaf of bread. This is their thinking, brother and sister. Now their thinking is being turned by events in the international world and events on the national scene. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to us that Allah, God, Master Farad Muhammad had the power to turn their minds and force them to do what he wills against their will. He said he had the power to make them bow to his will. And the Bible says every knee will bow and every tongue will be forced to confess. Whether you want to or not, circumstances will force you to do the very thing you don't think you will ever do. Now, what is it that they never wanted to do? They never wanted to let you go. Now, international pressures, domestic pressures, the forces of nature that are at work are absolutely forcing white people to take a stand, a very militant anti-black stand. How many of you saw the fight with Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran? Here's Sugar Ray, the darling of the Olympics. Do you remember?
Yes, sir.
Just 4 years ago, this very time, we were thrilled to watch the Sugar sweeten up our lives as he was dusting everybody for America. He dusted everybody. When he laid them out, the little American flag, and he kissed everybody. Oh, was he the dog? But all of a sudden, in 4 years, things have changed now.
Right.
The whole world scene is different. I don't want to see nothing black doing nothing good. He's unbeaten, and he steps in the ring with Roberto Duran, a Panamanian.
Listen now.
But because he's bright and near white, the cheers went up for the Panamanian in American theaters, and it wasn't just the Latin brothers cheering for him, it was white folk saying, "Kill that nigger! Kill that nigger!" Don't break this up. Maul him. Don't let him get off. Interfere with his rhythm. Don't you break it up. You have never seen a championship taken from a champion on a split decision. But we don't care. Sugar Man is too sweet. And we don't want niggas to have nothing sweet to look at to make them any more bolder than they are. So take his championship away. I ain't got to my subject, man. This is a shame. I really haven't got to where I wanted to. It's awful.
Come on. Come on with it.
Ali. Muhammad Ali. Formerly and presently known as Cassius gone back to Clay. That man, so powerful, so beautiful, so mighty in his sport. If you're a just man, you know that nobody has done it like Ali.
Right.
I ain't never seen no fighter like that man. Absolute beauty in motion. Look at how he won the hearts of the world. The world came to Ali's door. Look at how this devil, seeing him as a Muslim, stripped his championship because he said he was a conscientious objector. Took away 3 of the finest years of his life because he dared to stand up for what he believed and said, them Viet Congs ain't never done nothing to me. They ain't never called me nigger. That was a strong point. He won the whole world, third world, with that brave, bold stand. He was a man to every one of us who admired, loved that man and the ground that he walked on. This is the truth now. I would go and watch him train. And even in training, my heart would be beating like a trip hammer because I didn't want nobody to touch him. I mean, that's the kind of feeling Ali got out of us as black people. And I mean, the love for him began to grow when people began to see, when he said, "I am the greatest," he was taking an Islamic sentence an Islamic sentence that says, Allahu Akbar, God is the greatest. And since he was in harmony with God, bowing to the will of God, he said, I am the greatest. Not that he himself individually was the greatest, but as long as he was with God and God was with him and God is the greatest, then he also is the greatest. See, this is what he was saying. But he had another point in mind. He was trying to instill in young blacks that spirit, I am the greatest. Jesse is saying it now a little differently. I am somebody. But somebody don't necessarily mean you the greatest. You see? So Ali was right on it. And white folks who understand symbolism, and he's for separation, said, man, we got to cut him down. He's talking that black talk. Took away his championship. Went to work on him. Malcolm, who preached separation. We believe in separation. The devil said, if we can just separate Malcolm from his teacher, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we can break up a powerful movement. So they believed in separation and went to work. They believe in separation. If they see us coming together in unity, they'll work night and day to break you and me apart. Then Malcolm assassinated, and the government had something to do with it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Kill every teacher that is teaching something contrary to our strategy and our policy. Martin Luther King was killed by the United States government because he was moving away from the very thing that he was a champion of. He had dinner with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad one day in January, and by April he was gone. He sat with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and they talked over the white man being a devil. He didn't fully agree, but the most important thing is he didn't fully disagree. And he had begun to listen. In fact, the messenger told me he was more impressed with Coretta than he was with Dr. King, because it seemed like Coretta was more in the corner of what the messenger was teaching than Dr. King. And that day in February, the messenger went before the world and said these words: Dr. King and I have had a meeting, and we got along well. The devil's television cameras grinding. They said, you mean them two is going to integrate? Then we know we in trouble if Martin Luther King get together with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It's all over. The greatest orator that we've ever produced, Dr. Martin Luther King, if that man ever got together with Elijah Muhammad, it'd be all over, brother. And you saw Dr. King begin to change. Dr. King began talking about the international ramifications of America's policy in Southeast Asia and how it affected black people in America. He began to see that you couldn't separate the international scene from the domestic scene, and all of a sudden he was not a nigger anymore. He wasn't dealing with nigger business. That's all right, Dr. King, if you integrate toilets. It's all right. Want to integrate lunch counters. I'll be damned if we're going to have you meddling in our international affairs and our policies. Now he was getting into troubled waters. Martin Luther King assassinated. And if you notice, all nationalist groups broken down. All groups preaching separation busted up. They were busted up by the government. And look, those of you who love integration, I just want to say this. If you ever saw the King Alfred plan, which is a plan hatched by the government of the United States in the event of increased rioting in the streets. They said within 24 hours, every black leader would be arrested. And guess who was in that leadership that would be arrested? Roy Wilkins, the NAACP, the Urban League. Yes, sir. Even the most moderate Negroes, they realized, could not be trusted if war broke out between black and white. Even the moderate leaders had to go. And they had set aside detention areas. They said, even you black policemen, boy, you better get your act together, because they said they were going to take the arms away from every black policeman and strip the black soldiers of arms. You have to read it for yourself. That plan didn't go into effect in the 60s, but it is going into effect in the 1980s, and they already have brought it back out on the drawing board since Miami. Y'all all right? Yes, sir. Integration versus separation. Which way shall we go? Come on. Now, to destroy Ali. Ali represented almost the last symbol of black pride. Right. Do you hear me? Yes, sir. After the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's departure, after the murder of Malcolm, the murder of King, the destruction of nationalist organizations, notice now the NAACP also got into debt and couldn't get out with its own membership. Whitey had to come and bail out the NAACP. The Urban League got in trouble. All of the civil rights organizations got in trouble in the 70s because white folks refused to back up those organizations or was withdrawing support from those organizations. And do you know that Ali was the last strong man of that era? Whenever Ali came out, the people would still rush around Ali. He had to defeat Ali and destroy his image. And it began by giving him that role in Freedom Road. That's right. You analyze that from the subliminal suggestions to the overt things that were done to destroy Ali. It's all there. Last July 4th, when the was then called World Community of Al-Islam had their July 4th parade, which Ali was the Grand Marshal of, when they questioned Ali, Ali didn't speak totally in the behalf of America. He spoke more like a man that didn't want to get trapped into something, and he said, well, we know America's guilty of a lot of injustice to black people. And the leader of the world community had to get on Ali's case that same day. 1 year later, Ali has made such a complete change that in the Bilalian News it is reported that Ali said how happy he was to be able to sit with white people and to be able to hug white people. Now look at this. Even the dumbest Christian, the dumbest, most Uncle Tom black will not get up publicly and say, it's so nice to be sitting next to white folks and to be able to hug them. Even if that's what they thought, they don't come out publicly and say that. But here's Ali, the champ, making such a disgraceful statement, suckered into being an ambassador for the degenerate policy of the United States State Department, he goes to Africa to tell the Africans to boycott the Olympics. And he starts losing credibility. Young black children in some of the more enlightened schools took Ali's picture down. Now he don't draw the crowds anymore. The same God that gave him a magnetic power is now dusting him so that he cannot draw people anymore. The world community leader puts Ali beside him, thinking that in their death they can use Ali to draw a crowd, and Ali's dying, and the leader of the world community of Islam is dying, and the whole damn movement is dying because Almighty God is against you, black man, if you want to be a little Tom and a little sucker who want to get up next to your worst enemy, claiming that he's your friend. Let's go. If that's what you want, you're in trouble, not just with intelligent thinking black people, you're in trouble with God, because now you're trying to go against the grain of all the prophets' predictions of this time. And that's really where I wanted to go ever since I opened my mouth. I wanted to get to the prophets' predictions with respect to this. I'm slow at getting where I want to go. But I just want you to be patient with me. Look, the Holy Quran, in a chapter called The Spider, it says, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. And Allah introduces himself to us in this chapter by saying, I, Allah, am the best knower. He's letting us know, look, you know what you know. But what I know comprehends all knowledge, and when I determine a thing or permit a thing, even though it is painful to you, yet you must understand that I am the best knower. Go on through with the painful thing, and on the other side, you will understand that my scheme is effective, that I know what you know not. So Allah says to the believers, comforting them, he says, I, Allah, am the best knower. It's in a section called Trials Purify. Now, look, that's separation right there.
Yes, sir.
Just bear with me now. I know you're tired. I know you work hard. If you want to purify gold, you got to put it in fire to separate that which is an impurity in that gold. Is that right? If God wants to make of a people something of value, he must separate from that people of his choice that which is in them that is considered dross or like slag or inferior things in a pure metal. That has to be separated from the people in order for the people to be useful in God's plan. Trials purify. Now look, then he asks a question. And this question I'm going to get back to in a second, that deals right with these three things here. Do men think that they will be left alone on saying we believe and will not be tried? And indeed, we tried those before them, so Allah will certainly know those who are true, and he will know the liars. Now, among us, there are liars.
Yes, sir.
Listen good now. And among us, there are truthful persons, people. Among us, there are people who make a commitment and they're sincere. And among us, there are people who make a commitment, but they're insincere. They're liars. Now, you don't know who the liar is, because sometimes the liar lies so well that the liar looks like the truthful one. But Allah said, I am the best knower. I know the liar, but I want you to know the liars today. So I'm going to devise a scheme. Come on now. Break it down. That will absolutely manifest the liar from the truthful one and bring about a separation. This is why today, you know, when you play games, you're really gaming on yourself. See, if we had to fool one another, well, we could get away with it sometime. But when you're dealing with the divine supreme being, you can't fool him at all. And when you least expect it, the cover will be pulled off. And there we stand, buck naked. Your whole card peeped. Now, I was riding on a plane once, and I looked in the little compartment, and there was a book, and I began reading, and there was an interesting thing in there about the spider. So I said, wow, look at this. Allah names chapters in the Quran after his creation because he wants you to study something. I learned that the spider spins its web at the darkest hour of the night. That's why most people never see the web being spun. They just wake up in the morning and it's there. Because usually the spider spins its web when everyone is asleep. Isn't that heavy? You got to be up to catch the spider working its work. They say the spider is blind, it cannot see. That's what they say. Yes, sir. And the Holy Quran bears witness. I'll get to that in a minute. But the spider, when it spins its web, it gets in the center and lays for the prey to land on the web. It's made of a sort of a sticky substance. And the moment the prey lands in the web, it realizes it's landed in the wrong thing, and then it's trying to get out. And as it tries to get out, it shakes the web, and the spider knows, uh-oh, I got me somebody. And the spider rushes out of the center of the web to the prey. Now, the interesting thing that the scientists discovered is that the prey can get out of the web if it can get out within 3/10 of a second. To the wise in here, they already into that one. They chewing that one up. Look, 3/10 of a second, you got it. I'm sorry, it's 3 seconds. 3 seconds. You got to get out. 3 seconds. 3 seconds. I just put that on both. It's a heavy thing.
Right.
Now you pulling and going on, but the spider's steady moving to get you. And when the spider gets you, if you ain't gone in 3, he got you. And that's why when they make their little games, they say, they play hide and seek. 1, 2, 3. See? All movement is on the 3. See, but this we're going to have to get into another time. Look at this.
That spider then sticks its, I can't remember the technical name of it, into the fly or whatever's in there and releases enzymes. And those enzymes break down the form of that insect and liquefy it.
That's right.
Then that same thing that the spider injects into the insect becomes a straw, and he sucks up the inside of that creature into himself, leaving only the shell of that thing remaining. Oh, brother, this is so important to understand about separation. I'm getting to it. Just bear with me a couple more minutes. All right, everybody? Look, if you're a Christian or a believer in God of any denomination, you know that the scriptures tell us that this world is a world of evil. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And that one day we expect God to remove this world.
Right.
The Quran says that this is a transitory life. It's a life that makes you a person that's in transit. You don't stay here, you just move on through. But you're going someplace. Excuse me for dramatizing it like that. You know how they say, this is what they say. They say that we existed before we came into this body. And they say that when you come into this body, or this body comes into existence, it's traveling. It's got a point where it comes in, and before it was eternity. And it got a point where it goes out, and after it goes out is eternity. Is that right? So the life between these 2 points is a transitory life. It's a life where you're in transit, going from one point, from one eternity to another. Now, brother, if you don't understand that, you get all spooky. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad called, everybody all right?
Yes, sir.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad called this life, this transitory life, a vacuum in the history of the black nation. He said that before this world came into existence, the black man was in existence. And time has erased the black man's beginning. He is so old that the sun don't show our birth, nor the moon, nor the stars. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, we were before the sun, before the moon, before the stars. We were with God in the beginning when He created the heavens and the earth. He says, we black men are of the very nature of God Himself. If we are of God's nature, and His nature is our nature, then we also are God's too.
That's right. Right.
We have powers that we don't know that we have, because God is unlimited in creative ability, and we also as a people are unlimited in creative ability, but unrighteousness limits our powers. Listen good now. I'm going to say it again. Unrighteousness limits our power. You have the power to see beyond physical things. You have the power to see into the future and to see in behind you, but it is unrighteous conduct that interferes with your ability to vision ahead and vision behind. You have the ability to hear words unspoken. You have the power, listen good now, to reach out and touch people by thought and communicate without words. That is a dormant power in every human being, but in the original human being, the black man, it is most prevalent. But unrighteousness short circuits your ability, your God force, and your God powers. So you are looking for a mystery God. You're looking and scanning the skies, looking for the God who created all this wonder, not knowing that the God that created all this wonder is dead and dormant in you, because you are the descendant of God who has lost your power to be yourself. This vacuum, and a vacuum is that which has no air, no water, therefore no life exists in a vacuum. Is that right? Yes, sir. Well, how could this be a vacuum then? We're all alive, are we? You not living? Ain't nobody in here living. You're not alive. Listen to me good. Some of the Muslims think they're living. This is dead as hell, man. Right. All of you. You ain't living. You dead. All of you. You say, well, Honorable Elijah Muhammad raised me from the dead. Shut up, fool. Raised is the past participle of the verb to raise, which means it's an action that began and is completed. How in the hell could you be raised from the dead and you don't have the power to will and bring into existence what you will? You are not yet raised, but the process of resurrection started when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad brought you into the knowledge of God, the knowledge of yourself, and the knowledge of the devil. But you interfered with that process by going back into the grave of filth and ignorance. How could you be raised? We interfered with the process of resurrection. Resurrection don't mean that I know that Allah is God and the white man is the devil. I'm raised. That's the beginning. Being raised means I'm back to where I once was. And if I am in my original state, I have my original mind, then I can do what the original man once did. And since I am not that yet, I have to keep on moving toward the goal. And what is the goal? The goal is to be yourself. And what is yourself? Myself is a righteous Muslim. Myself is the original man. Myself is God. But what kind of vacuum is this? Bear with me, man.
Take your time.
I don't mean to get carried away. All brother. But look, brother and sister, you know, we thought we understood the message. All of us sitting around the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, looking at it, listening to him, we thought we understood him. And the reason we thought we understood him is because we were so disrespectful of who we really are that we took him like ourselves, and we disrespected him because we didn't dig deep enough into what he said, because we really didn't believe he was directly from the face of God. Right. If we had believed he was directly from God, there was no word that he spoke that we would be taking as some surface word. We would be digging in that word, looking into it, over it, under it, around it, and perhaps we might have understood. But he knew that we would grow up one of these days.
That's right.
Brothers and sisters, I don't want to start a emotion here that loses you. Start a motion that loses you. Because you understood all that I was saying about integration, separation, segregation. That's elementary, my dear Watson.
That's right.
If we had believed he was directly from God, there was no word that he spoke that we would be taking as some surface word. We would be digging in that word, looking into it, over it, under it, around it, and perhaps we might have understood. But he knew that we would grow up one of these days.
That's right.
Brothers and sisters, I don't want to start a emotion here that loses you. Start a motion that loses you. Because you understood all that I was saying about integration, separation, segregation. That's elementary, my dear Watson. But what we've got to understand today is why separate now? What is separation all about? Is it some fanciful thing that Elijah Muhammad concocted? Or is it by divine order that we separate? Now look, air, everybody all right?
Yes, sir.
Air is symbolic of spirit. Water is symbolic of wisdom.
That's right.
And of course, life is the activity based on wisdom.
That's right.
All right?
Yes, sir.
In this vacuum, there would be no air, no water, no life. Meaning that the original man of the earth, the black man, would not be under the inspiration of God. He wouldn't have the revitalizing water of divine wisdom. Therefore, he would not show forth in his life activity the spirit, nor the wisdom, nor the life of God.
That's right.
Do you? Somehow I think that you are not getting me. I'm going to go back over that. I'm going to ask a question. Have you heard that the black man was in existence before the white man? Yes, sir. Do you agree with it?
Yes, sir.
Have you heard the scriptural saying that there is nothing new under the sun?
Yes, sir.
Do you believe that there's nothing new under the sun?
Yes, sir.
Then you mean men flew before?
That's right.
Men built skyscrapers before?
That's right.
Huh?
Yes.
Men built civilization before?
Yes, sir.
All right then. If there was no Caucasian man to build, then who did those buildings? Who flew those planes? Who built that civilization? It was your fathers. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Where is that civilization? They're gone. Then where is the knowledge, the wisdom of that civilization? Where is the spirit of that wisdom demonstrated in the life of black people that we once were that mighty? It's gone too. Why? Because in a vacuum there is no air, no water, no life. And the white man's world absolutely kills the power of God in you. Because the white man's world is a contrary world.
That's right.
Contrary to what? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that the essentials of life are freedom, justice, and equality. Anything that deprives you of freedom, deprives you of justice, deprives you of equality, deprives you of the essentials of life. This world of the Caucasian is a world designed to deprive you and me, black people, dark people, and their own people of freedom, justice, and equality. This means what?
excuse me, brothers, I want to say this. That when you're posting, brothers, post them at another time. When you're into the most difficult period in your subject matter, it's critical. You got to be sensitive enough to the critical nature of what I'm doing. Then to post people at a time when anything that distracts from one word that I'm saying could cause them to miss the whole point.
Yes, sir.
You understand? I'm not condemning, I'm just instructing. All right? So, and that's my job.
Yes, sir.
Just to instruct.
Yes, sir.
So we who are handling these things, we will develop the ability to think. Is this the right time to do that? No. I'll wait until the subject matter is lighter. They're all right, they're sitting down.
Good instruction.
Unless they just want to get up. I'm standing up. You need to send some relief for me. I want you to get this point on this vacuum.
Come on. Yes, sir.
Because if you don't see this, you won't know why separation is absolutely vital to your own life. If the black man was able to do all that great work before, why don't you see a sign of it now, even in Africa? You look at African governments. And how many of you have traveled in Africa? All right. You go to any African government today, they're struggling, brother and sister. They don't show the signs today in what they're doing of their former greatness. No, they don't. They show signs of dependence on Europe. Am I telling the truth?
Yes, sir.
They're struggling to come to grips with it, but they're still dependent on Europe. Well, if the black man was so mighty before the white man's world came into existence, and there is nothing new under the sun, and scientists are unearthing in their archaeological, anthropological discoveries remnants of civilizations equal to and superior to this one right here. Then where is that knowledge? Where is that wisdom? If there is no air in a vacuum, I repeat, the spirit is missing. The wisdom, which is compared to water, that would produce the spirit, is not present. And the activity of that wisdom and of that spirit is also absent. Therefore, the vacuum represents death. Now, is this in harmony with the scripture? Yeah. You go read your Bible. The Bible refers to the life of this world as death. Because the life of this world is called sin.
That's right.
And the wages of sin is what?
Yeah.
But see, when you talk about death, and when we talk about death, here's the way we talk about it. If you commit sin, one day you're going to die, and God's going to send you to the devil, and the devil going to burn you, honey, because the wages of sin is death. Oh, it's nice, it's right, but it's so childish. It's nice for your babies to read that and understand it like that. But you are grown up now. When are we going to grow up into understanding sin and the effects of sin? Sin is not only acting contrary to divine law. Sin starts with thinking out of divine order. Listen good. This whole world is designed to make you think wrong, and then naturally wrong thought produces wrong action. Now, what does the wrong thought
conceived in the brain, what effect does wrong thinking have on the powers of the cells of the brain to vision? Say, oh man, don't get into that. It's really uncomfortable for me to even think on it. But you got to think on it, brother and sister. Sin has a powerful effect on the human mind. Sin has a powerful effect on the human spirit. Sin has a powerful effect on the psyche. Sin has a powerful effect on the brain and the brain's function, because the cell of the brain, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us, is created by God to think right. And God set the order for our thinking in the beginning when He created, and He created us after that order. So we're thinking contrary to the very nature in which the cells of our brain is constructed. So that's like planing wood against the grain. You destroy the beauty of the brain, and your brain is destroyed. The beauty of you as a human being and a divine being is destroyed. You no longer are what you once were, and that's why you are called dead. You are dead to who you are. You are dead to your original power, and the only way we can prove that God exists is that you must be resurrected from the dead. The grave that you sleep in is the corrupt, rotten, decadent thoughts that are the dirt of your mind. That's where you and I have been buried, in this vacuum. White folks' life, white folks' style, white folks' education, it's laughable. Right. I mean, when you start growing up in wisdom, you laugh at the white man's knowledge. That's right. You really laugh at him. Not that you laugh in a sense of ha ha ha, but you chuckle. You say, how could I have let a dude like this rule me and dominate me so completely with his madness? How could I have done such? How could I have been so asleep, so dead, that I thought his education was the answer for me, when his education is death for me and all those who follow his principles of education? They die in him. But this is not saying we can't learn from him, but you must learn from him while standing on your own independent foundation. Otherwise, if you stand on his foundation, you can't learn from him. You become absorbed into him and you die. And you become like the death of his world. It's a finite world. It had a beginning and it has an ending, and you become a part of his world. Therefore, when his world ends, you end with his world. Yes, sir. That's why you all feel so threatened today when you hear talk about America being destroyed. Oh, America? Oh no, not America. For spacious skies, not the amber waves of grain. Hell yeah, all of that. And then some. How come you don't think it can go? What is the matter with you? It is because you are lost in love with a decadent world. You can't see this world ending because you don't know where your place will be if this world ends, because you're tied into the world now. He's sucked you right in, and even though you're not integrated physically, you have become one in mind and spirit with the white man. So you have a vested interest in seeing that the white man's world continues. So when somebody dares to tell you that Whitey's world is coming to an end, you say, can't be, he got to be lying. Why? Because subconsciously you're saying, where will I go? What will I do? Where's my place? What did you do for an eternity before his vacuum world came into existence. Oh, don't bother me with that. I can't see that far. All I know is I have a home, I have a car, I have money in the bank. For God's sake, don't tell me that white folks' world is coming down. For God's sake, I must tell you that his world is coming down. Now look, here you are in his world. I'm going to finish up in about 15 minutes, all right? Please, I don't really want to bore you, and I don't want to keep you long, but you just got to know why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad advocated separation for you. That's all. He wasn't no politician, brother and sister. He wasn't no man that saw it was politically feasible. He didn't do it just because Whitey was brutalizing you and we should leave him because he's beastly. Yeah, I mean, that's intelligent to start thinking of leaving a cat who's messing over you like that. But that's not the core root reason. It goes so much deeper than that. We're dealing with the manifestation of why you should think of leaving, but the real root reason you have not bothered to think about. And it's about you. It's about your survival. It's about your sanity and your ability to manifest as a people. You are under a vacuum. You are under the world of sin. And the world of sin exercises such power over our process of thought, the way we think and the way we go about even getting our daily sustenance, that we are spinning in his world. This is why his world is called by the wise. Everybody all right?
Yes, sir.
It's called gravity. And when you're dead, they put you in the grave. Gravity is a force created by the motion of the earth. The earth is spinning, isn't it? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to us that the earth is turning at the speed of 1,037 1/3 miles per hour on its way around the sun. That spinning motion of the earth creates a force, and that force inclines everyone on the earth to the earth. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
That force is called gravity.
That's right.
Now, when the Bible and Holy Quran refer to this transitory life, it's a life of the grave. It's a life where the divine in man is buried under a life of a world of sport and play.
That's right.
So now, in order to get out of the pull of gravity, you have to have a projection. You have to have a power able to project you beyond the force that inclines you to the motion of the world. The white man's world has created a motion, and that motion sets up the force spiritually called gravity. That motion of his world keeps you revolving on his terms. And the only way you can get out of the motion of his world is you have to have not only truth, but you have to have an understanding of the truth that you claim to know in order to get out of the pull of this world into that world that the scripture refers to as the hereafter. All right. Now notice the term hereafter.
Yes, sir.
Hereafter. Two adverbs. One of place and one of time. Here, after. Here where? After what? Here, after. Here where? After what? Jesus said, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Where? On earth as it is in heaven. Here where? After what? It ain't talking about thereafter. It says hereafter. Hereafter what? After the vacuum of the transitory life of this world has been destroyed, there will be an eternity of progress like there was before this world came into existence, but that progress will be in righteousness, in obedience to the divine will of Almighty God Allah.
Yes, sir.
Let's look at it. So now, you have, everybody all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to close at 3 seconds, but I'm going to leave the 3 up there.
Teach on the trial.
This world is death to the human spirit. This world is death to the divine spirit. This world represents death to the life of righteousness. That's what the world represents. That's what the life of sport and play represents. That's what the mentality and the psychology of sin represents. It represents death to your reflection and manifestation of divine attributes. As Muslims, we are permitted by Allah to wear the attributes of God.
Yes, sir.
For what? Why should you be called Rahman? Why should you be called Rahim? Why should you be called Malik? Why should you be called Rushdan or Rashidin? Why should you be called Kareem? Since Allah has 99 attributes and the 100th name is Allah, why in the divine scheme did He confer the favor of His own name on us? That we had the divine right to wear His name. It is because we also have the divine capability of manifesting that attribute in living force. But to the degree that we can curtail sin and its effects, to the degree that we can curtail the effect of the world of sport and play, it is to that degree that we can manifest the attributes of Allah. So that the whole earth, when this world is destroyed, will be a mosque.
Yes, sir.
And Allah's attributes will be living, moving, breathing in human beings manifesting God.
That's right.
God is not to remain some object out in space for you to worship and not receive the divine impress of His character on you, that you become a reflection of God. And that's why God sends prophets into the world, not for you to worship prophets, but for you to see that the prophet who submitted to the will of God becomes an example or a reflection of God's divine character. All right. In this world called, and by the only Elijah Muhammad, the white man's world.
Yes, sir.
His world, because his ideas,
Right.
his way predominates. Not God's way, not Moses' way, not Jesus' way, not Prophet Muhammad's way, but the Caucasian has put his way over God.
That's right.
The Muslims, the Christians, and the Jews have fallen victim to the influence of the world.
Right.
So that Prophet Muhammad's way is no longer the way of the Muslims. The Quran is like a forsaken book. They talk it, but they don't live it.
Right.
Well, there are some few that do.
Yes, sir.
Same with the Christians, same with the Jews. But this is all written. 3 periods of time. From Adam to Moses, 2,000 years. From Moses to Esau or Jesus, 2,000 years. And from Esau to the coming of the Mahdi at the end of the 6,000-year rule of this world, you got another 2,000 years. And in between Jesus, in the 7th century after Jesus, comes Prophet Muhammad.
That's right.
What has this got to do with separation? Each one of these worthies of God came to bring divine air, divine water, divine life into the vacuum. And after the death of Moses, his civilization was broken by Nimrod. And after the death of Jesus, look at the 3 that's up here now. 300 years before Jesus was born, Nimrod broke the civilization of Moses. And after Jesus was murdered, it was 3 centuries after Jesus that the Christians decided to carry on his work at the Council of Nice, 325 AD, not in Jerusalem, but in Rome, where the Apostles' Creed was put together.
Right.
I believe in one God, the Father Almighty. They had to get together on what they believed and put it together for Christendom.
That's right.
Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, came in the 7th century, and he said in the Hadith that 3 centuries after him, 3 generations after him would no longer be of him. So after 3 generations, the Muslim world went into corruption and died, and the light died out.
Yes, sir. Teach that time. Right.
I'm sorry, baby. See, that man with that talk, I was sleeping so sweet. All praise is due to Allah. But now, brothers and sisters, this is serious. You cannot destroy a world before its time. The Quran teaches us that every nation has its term. And it will not go before time, nor will it tarry. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that this world was given 6,000 years to rule.
Right.
The scholars of Islam say that 1,400 years, between 1385 and 1,400 years from Prophet Muhammad, the end would come.
That's right.
All right. Now, the end of what? If this world, which is symbolized by the Caucasians' rule, has a time to end, then you and I have a time to make a decision.
Right.
What decision do you have to make? When the time of the white man's world comes to an end, or the end of this system of things comes to an end, God is not going to leave you without a warner. He has got to send a warner to you to remind you of that which the scriptures have already predicted that you read about but haven't paid much attention to. And that reminder puts you and me in the valley of decision, because now we got to decide whether we want to stay with the world or whether we want to separate from the world into that world that is called the hereafter. Separation versus integration. Which one will it be? Now we close. In the book of Genesis, it is written that we would go into bondage for 400 years. And it says, after that 400 years of our sojourn in a strange land that is not ours, God would come. And he would judge the nation that we would serve, and afterwards, not before the judgment, after the judgment, we would come out of it and go to our own and be buried in a good old age. There in the language, and afterwards they shall go out. I shall bring them out of the land in which they were sold. He's talking about separating you not only from people but from land, because that land, he said, is going to be destroyed. Right. This is scripture. Now, everybody been thinking this is the Jews. These fakers who call themselves Jews. When Sadat was on TV recently arguing with Begin, I think Walter Cronkite asked him about the pyramids and said, weren't these built by the Jews when they were in bondage? And Cronkite said, Sadat said, in our history, we don't have any record of any people called Jews being in bondage here. The pyramids were built by working people, just like what you have there was built by. Well, they got right off of that and moved on. Now look, brother, if there were no people, according to their history, named Jews in bondage in Egypt for 400 years, what is that for in the Bible and in the Holy Quran? Because the Quran is a true book. And the Quran mentions Moses and mentions Pharaoh and mentions Egypt. Is that right? Yes, sir. Do you know that in the history of all of these people, you can't find nobody on this earth who has been 400 years in bondage other than you and me? Think about it. Go read the history. See if you find any other people that have been in a land that was not theirs 400 years other than you and me. And if the scripture is pointing to your and my sojourn in America under their government, that God would come and judge this government, and during the judgment we would be right here during much of it. And then afterwards, he would bring us out. Well, you know, you got to get a certain part of it. The main crushing disaster, you won't get that. But the part that you and I are to get is to affirm the truth of that which a messenger from among us taught us. That truth has to be affirmed. And you have to be right there where you call the messenger a liar. You got to be right there and taste the very thing that you called a lie. So that you can retract your statement. And know that when God sends you a messenger, the worst thing you could do is to say that the messenger lied. Because you're not calling the messenger a liar. You're saying God is a liar. And then you force God to bring upon you the very thing that the messenger warned you about. All right now. Now look, brother. When the Honorable Elijah Muhammad stood up among us, many of us called him a liar. If you notice, the white man, he ain't called Muhammad a liar. He just said he taught hate. But he didn't say he lied. When he said the Caucasian is a devil, the white man didn't say, I'm not. He said he's teaching hate. He had never stood up here and said, I'm not a devil. because he know a devil is as a devil does. This Quran don't teach us to believe in a spook devil. From the very second surah of this book, under the title of a section on lip profession. Remember the verse we just read before in the chapter of the spider? It says Allah tries them to separate the liars from those that are truthful. So right in the second surah, it's introduced the same way. Alif Lam Mim, I, Allah, am the best knower. And then he begins to say that there are those who say they believe and they do not. And in their hearts is a disease and they lie. And when they are alone with their mischief makers, some say devils or the leaders of rebellion to the will of God, they say, we with you. We just mocking them. But Allah says he will pay them back their mockery. And he leaves them alone in their inordinacy, blindly wandering on. Now let's wrap this up. Jesus told his disciples, be ye separate. I am in the world, but I'm not what? Look at the difference. In, but not of. Check out those two prepositions. I'm in it, but I'm not of it. Of denotes possession. I'm in this world, but I'm not possessed by the same spirit that possesses this world. The spirit of this world is rebellion to the will of God. I'm in the world, but I'm in submission to the will of God. Therefore, I'm in it, but I'm not of it. Be ye separate from it. That man was teaching. He said, if you don't want to be contaminated with this, the filth and the degeneracy of the world, separate yourself from it. How you going to tell me you in a bar room? Everybody drinking. And drinking used to be your hang-up. And you keep hanging around what your hang-up is, before you know it, you take a drink. In order to heal you from the disease of drunkenness, we not only got to separate you from the bottle, we have to separate you from the place where you got the bottle and from your bottle drinking buddies. Because if you don't have clean association, then that clean association, that dirty association will bring you right back into your dirty action. And that's why the messenger, when he taught us, he called us out from that and gave us a clean society to revolve in, to get strength to go back after our brother and sister in the mud. All right. Now look at the Quran's teachings on separation. In the 30th surah, the Quran says it like this, and it's very beautiful language. Set your face for religion, being upright. Before there come from Allah that which cannot be averted. And on that day, they will be separated. Now, here's an order given to us. If you want to get out of the vacuum, get out of the transitory life, you got to set your face, set your mind, set yourself for that kind of teaching that will cause you to live upright, because in the life of the hereafter, there will be no people in the hereafter that are not upright, righteous people. The Bible puts it differently. It says in that world, there'll be no effeminates. That means if you're a faggot, you got to get your act together. Excuse the language, brother. Y'all know what I'm saying. It says sissies ain't gonna make it. Lesbians ain't gonna make it. God does not want no man, woman, and no woman, man. And it's immaterial to him whether you live or die, because he's totally independent of you and me. He was God before you came into existence and will be God after you are out of existence. And he don't need your praise. Your and my praise of him don't make him Allah. It is his own power and wisdom that makes him what he is. Huh? But that's up to you. You got to make a decision now. How long you going to continue to halt between two opinions? You and I both are in the valley of decision. Now look, the Bible says he don't want no feminine, he don't want no whoremonger. What is that? Boy, all these people with their crosses around their neck, they Star of David and their crescents and star. Ain't that going to be a bad day, brother? Wrapped up in our symbols of righteousness. And the God turn us down and say, hey, man, I'm sorry, you can't make it. Because you was paying me lip service. And it said, woe to those in that day whose good deeds are light. Oh, brother and sister, we got to be separated from the world. We got to come out of it, and we've got to separate ourselves from the worldly ideas and foolishness that keeps us from manifesting the attributes of God. So we have a lot of work to do on the subject of separation. It's impossible to deal with it fully in one day. But it is sufficient, beloved brothers and sisters, for you and me to know this: that when white folks saw Elijah Muhammad stand up and say, we got to build a nation of Islam, he didn't say a nation of something else. He said a nation of Islam. That means a community of people who are welded together, not because they're black. They're welded together because of their commitment to submit, to carry out the will of Allah. That's what makes us the Nation of Islam. Do you know that there is not a nation of Islam on earth today? Khomeini's trying.
Yes, sir.
But they're fighting him tooth and nail.
Right.
Saudi Arabia don't even attempt to say that's a nation of Islam.
Right.
Though all the religious symbols of our great nature is there in Mecca.
Right.
And it's the birthplace of the great worthies of God.
Sir.
But they know that's not a nation of Islam.
No, sir.
Pakistan is not a nation of Islam. Egypt is not a nation of Islam. Libya is not a nation of Islam. Nowhere on earth is there a true nation of Islam. And Allah wanted us, the despised, the rejected, the unwanted people, to be a nation in submission to the will of God. That which they attempted to do, He wanted us to do it and be a light for the rest of the world, fulfilling the hadith of Prophet Muhammad that the son of Islam would rise from the west in the latter day. It means a community of righteous people would come up out of the west, showing forth light back to the east, because the east is now being eclipsed in the darkness of this world in rebellion against the laws of God.
Right.
And Allah says, I'm going to make a people out of some people that are not considered no people. So we came forward, the Nation of Islam, following the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And believe me, brothers and sisters, we did a service to the messenger, but most of us did a disservice to him. Because we were immature in understanding his message. And we were immature in relating his message. And we were immature in carrying out the principles of his message. So we did good and we did harm. And so Allah, in his own wisdom, devised a trial to separate from the nation of Islam all the liars that had taken root there. In the chapter The Spider, it's talking about somebody spinning a web in a dark hour and trapping life in a web. And if they don't get out of the trap within 3 years, he got them.
Right.
And the teaching that he puts into them breaks down the form that they once had for Allah. And then they become liquid. And then they take on the form of the world in the name of taking on the form of Islam.
Yes, sir.
Now that's the worst deceit of all. When you take on a religion in form, but yet the spirit of that which you say you believe, if you compare it to the truth of the teachings, you find that your spirit is the world. Your spirit is the life of the world. That's real deceit. So to dress up in the garment of Islam on the outside and not dress up in the spirit of Islam on the inside is mockery. So the messenger said when he left us, it is not the long white dress or the long black dress. He said the wise will be coming to see whether you are living the principles of Islam. And if you are living the principles of Islam, then they will say that you are a Muslim. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now, when white folks want to integrate you into their world, you know what they're saying? I know my world is going. I know that I'm divinely headed for chastisement. But I hate you so much. You are innocent because I brought your fathers into slavery and took them out of Islam. And I want to take you down to hell with me when I go. So I'm going to offer you my women and girls, because I know that's what you want. I'm going to undress them for you. Give them hot pants to put on. I'm going to give them little running clothes to put on with a big slit up to the hip bone so that you'll always be peeping to see what you can see, knowing that what you see is what you get. I got a trap for you, black man. You ain't going into no righteousness. I'm going to fix you. I'm going to heat the world up with more filth and more filth. I'm going to subliminally suggest degenerate behavior to you. And then I'm going to overtly invite you to take part in what I've already seeded your mind for. I'm going to put out all kind of R-rated and double X-rated movies so that the Muslims
will look at it and think maybe it's a Muslim movie because I see Johnny 3X up there. They may say, oh, 3X, that may be a Muslim movie. Now, brothers and sisters, to my Muslim brothers, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad didn't want to give us the names of Allah at first. And the reason he didn't give us the names of Allah at first is that his respect for that name is such that he wanted us to qualify for that name even though the name is ours. He doesn't like us tacking on ourselves the divine attributes of Allah without first making a commitment to live the life. And then look at how much disgrace we bring to the name. Willie Sharif caught in bank robbery. Mikhail Salahuddin indicted for rape. Let's look how that sounds. How can Sharif be a bank robber? That's God's name. God don't rob no banks. And a representative of God don't lie, cheat, or steal. Huh? Not knowingly. How could Salahuddin rape somebody? We got to be out of the spirit of the world. And that's why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in our form, he said, on your approval, you will be given a holy name. Your forms have passed the laborer's inspection. I hope they will be approved by Allah, letting you know that you're yet not approved. You got to strive to get Allah's approval. He was very wise in what he did. But so many of us were so busy criticizing him, we didn't get a good look at it. And now in his absence, we bring his name and his work and his teachings back up because in the absence of a teacher, sometimes you can reason with him better. Now I ask you as I leave you, do you think that the divine hand is at work inside America?
Yes, sir.
I mean, look at the heat in Texas. They haven't seen a cloud. They don't know when they'll see another one. Whitey was saying, let's go up and see the clouds. And they said, oh, there's no clouds to see. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Savior's Day 1973, did this. Go back with in your mind, reflect. He said, the cattle, he said, will look up at the sun, yes, sir, gritting its teeth, right, looking for water, and there will be none. And Allah will say to the cattle, my cattle, you have not disobeyed me. But if I let you live, he will fatten you up and take you to market and get a high price. He said, but I'm after your master, meaning the Caucasian, to bring him down. And so I have to kill you. So I'm not going to let it rain. And we listened to him and we heard him, but we didn't hear him. He said there would be unusual rain, unusual snow. He said there would be unusual earthquakes. Now, you haven't seen that yet. He said hail would fall out of the sky like blocks of ice. He said the little things you've seen like golf balls and lemons, he said this is not what Allah has in mind. He's leading you to the big thing, blocks of ice. Now, this Caucasian is not telling you all that's going on now. He's under divine chastisement. As the Holy Quran said, Allah is going to bring one calamity after another until he's laid low. Why? He's a proud, rebellious opponent of Allah and of his prophets, messengers, and the Quran and its teachings. He got to pay. You and I are in the midst of it. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us these things were coming. He told us that the last trick the white man would use would be to give us his woman. He said, but then the judgment would sit. And he said, you see the whole thing turn right around. And now look, Whitey said he wanted to integrate you. Now the whole thing is turning around. He don't want nothing more to do with you and me. He's letting you go now, isn't he? A conservative president. I believe some real conservative gonna get in.
Yes, sir.
Now look, they say that the wheat belt is like it was when it became a dust bowl in the 30s. Now the Bible predicts famine, pestilence, earthquake. Now you see them saying famine is on the way. Right. Potatoes in the South were $5.50 a bushel a few weeks ago. Now they're $13.50 a bushel. They have doubled in price and then some in just a few weeks. Why? Because the weather is wreaking havoc, brothers and sisters. This is nothing to play with. God is after you. That San Joaquin Valley in California, which produces 40% of America's produce, is now being turned gradually into a desert. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to me one day, he said, brother, I wouldn't buy nothing on the East Coast. I was talking about buying a warehouse out there. He said, no, brother, all the coastlines are going to be pushed in. Right. With terrific rain and storms. Now the devil says that the coastline has eroded. Whitey went out and built his home on the beach. Now the beach is under his house. And his house is in the water. He got to pick up his house and run back some feet. I mean, listen, Whitey's in trouble, brother. Look, I was going to say this. In Ohio last week, Chillicothe, you know where Chillicothe is? Anybody been to jail, you know Chillicothe. Big prison down there. Over the news they said, God must love black. Or must be black. Listen to this. Why are you saying that, white folks? Because the wind bypassed the ghetto. I ain't lying. They admit this, brother. The wind went right past black folk, blowed right on by, and then got inside of Whitey's neighborhood and blew it down. The Quran says Allah brought a violent wind against the wicked people of Ad and Thamud. A roaring wind that blew 7 days and 7 nights. And you got a taste of that wind the other night at 4:30. Time for you to pray. You got woke up. You didn't get the full wind. You got a portion of it, but the white neighborhood, the suburb, were blown out, brother. Detroit was ripped up while Reagan was speaking. Lights went out. Put the candle on. Wind's blowing. There's a God at work. Wind blowing here. Tornado coming out of dark clouds here. Tornado just dancing. Messenger said like girls in long skirts tearing up Whitey's towns and cities. Heat banned down. Folk just falling out. What's the matter with you? Eating all that bad food that God told you not to eat. Honorable Elijah Muhammad warned you about the way you eat. He told you you were eating too much and the wrong kind of food. He said, ain't nobody gonna tell me what to do. I'll eat all the hog maw chitlin I want to eat. Now, Elijah Muhammad warned you about the 5 spirits. Now you become a big drunkard, pouring alcohol in your mouth. The boiling point of alcohol is 160 degrees Fahrenheit. The boiling point of water is 212. Now you go out there pouring all that alcohol in your system, which is fire, and the fire of the sun beating down on the fire within. You got fire within and fire without, and wonder why your brain is cooking and you just falling out in the street. You're going to pay for your rebellion against God. That's what it's all about. The Holy Quran said, beware of a chastisement that won't only affect the innocent, the guilty, even the innocent will be affected by that chastisement. And today black folk just dropping dead. Heat's too much. And Allah ain't lighting it up, He banned down. In the book of Revelations, it talks about the 7 angels that poured out the 7 last vials of destruction on the world. And one of those angels had charge over the sun, and he was told to turn the sun up, meaning, burn the earth with the sun. And the devil is saying he sees spots on the sun like he ain't seen before. And them spots are causing the sun to jump out. 30 and 40,000 miles, the sun is just belching up flames, throwing them out, and the flames are scorching the earth, drying up rivers and lakes, ponds, leaving the fish there dead on the bank. That's what he said would happen. He said to me one day, he said, brother, and he don't talk this thing in private, he said this thing in public. He said, brother, one day the temperature will be up real high, and the people's pores will be wide open because it'll be summer. And then Allah will drive the temperature down 50 degrees in the space of a few hours, and then it will snow. And then while their pores are open, all that cold will get in their pores, and the people will start dropping dead of pneumonia. And it happened. Out there in Colorado, it was hot one day. And all of a sudden it turned cold and it snowed. People coming up cold. It happened right here in Chicago. The temperature dropped 40 degrees in one few hours. You think that this is is normal? This is very unnormal or out of the norm. This is unnatural because the hand of the God is working, brother, to bear witness to the man that God raised up for your and my deliverance, that man was not a liar. He was a truthful warner to you of the end of the white man's world. And now you back in the valley. What you gonna do? You gonna hang out with white folks in their world? Or you gonna come home, separate, clean yourself up, and submit to carry out the will of Allah and not your own will? What are you going to do? You have a little time, but it's not a lot of time. So you go home and think about yourself and your family. Think about your future. Think about your people. Think about what you see happening abroad and here. Revolution is coming inside this country. Please listen. That little thing that broke out in Miami is no lightweight action. That's also in the Holy Quran's teaching. It says when the cities are set on fire. Now you see the folk setting the cities on fire. And they said, when they looked at Liberty City, they said this wasn't no cats throwing no Molotov cocktail. These were professionals. They said, these are our Vietnam veterans. We trained them for the Viet Cong, and now they're home. And they said they're sending a message to Washington to be ready for urban guerrilla warfare. Now, brothers and sisters, there are Vietnam veterans all over. there are black dissatisfied people all over America that know how to kill. You talk shooting, but they've been trained to shoot, trained to kill, trained to burn, trained to make bombs, and they making them, and they got them, and they are ready. I don't know who they are, and it ain't my business to know, but I do know that they're there because the books say they're there. And at the right time, under the right circumstances, they're going to come up and deal. And when they start dealing, you can't come out talking about all praises due to Allah, you know. You can't come out of your house with your Bible saying the Lord will make a way. You better get your behind the door, close the door, because if you don't have the right thing at the right time, when the death angel moves through, you get caught. That's what Passover is all about. Not something that took place 4,000 years ago. You're about to go through Passover today, and if your action ain't right, the death angel will most certainly find you, because the last plague that God gave to Pharaoh was death. And that's the only thing that white folks understand is death. And when they see, so it's coming from every direction on them now. And you notice they're getting real angry. So there's no time for playing. This is no time for us, brothers and sisters, to be thinking foolishly. It's a time for us to think sanely. And I close with this verse from the Quran. It says in the 113th chapter of the Quran, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I seek refuge in the Lord of the dawn from the evil of what He has created. Some translations say from the evil or from the mischief of created things. I seek refuge in the Lord of the dawn from the evil of darkness when it overspreads. I seek refuge in Allah from the evil of him who casts an evil suggestion in a firm resolution. I seek refuge in Allah from the evil of the envier when he envies. And that's the time that we're living in right now. I mean, darkness is spreading over every land. When I say darkness, I mean spiritual darkness, wickedness, corruption, bestiality. And I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, I don't know what it's like to see people hungry and no food. I have never seen that in my life. In one sense, I was fortunate, and you were fortunate to live in the land of plenty. I don't know what it's like to be hungry. Even though my mother was on welfare and we were poor, we managed to eat every night. But I want you to think of what it would be like when your little baby cries out for milk and you have none. What it would be like when the uprising in the streets come and the first place that is hit is all the food stores. And all the food is taken out of the stores and our community is in an uproar. They call it food riots. And when you have nothing in your cupboard to give your little baby, and you hear your baby crying, and there is no food, and you cannot go out in the streets because blood is in the streets, you will remember the words that you heard, that you should have been prepared. And you will be thinking of killing yourself and your children. The Bible says you will look at your little fat babies with the thought in mind of eating your children. You will be so hungry because of the famine. One white woman in Jet magazine, it was reported,
actually ate a 6-year-old black child and talked about how delicious the little nigger tasted. I mean, think about this depraved mind. And think about when it gets that dark out there. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad warned us. Put a little something aside. Store up a little food. Something that you could stay in your house for months and be able to eat. He told us to practice fasting. The Orthodox world of Islam is on Ramadan now. That's a wonderful discipline. And we need to practice fasting. You need to do it once, then say I won't eat for 2 days, then say I won't eat for 3 days. Try it. Because when it comes to food for you or food for the children, you should know how to fast and let the children eat. But if you haven't started practicing now survival techniques, you'll be caught in an hour that you least expect. It's very serious. I seek refuge in Allah from the envier when he envies. And the messenger said that devil, when he sees his world closing down, he will look at you and he will say, this nigga is going to see the hereafter. And he'll walk up to you and just hawk, spit right in your face, just to get a chance to kill you. Right. They're doing it now. Right. You notice how police even stop you and provoke you? Have you, I mean, you see it, brother. They just want to kill somebody. Them 3 police that beat up Brother Ramey for a cigarette. Brothers and sisters, this is going to spread. That woman said, when she looked at that thing in Miami, she said, this is war. And when war is declared, you cannot go out in the streets trying to make peace with white folks. Then you'll find out that every one of them is with their brother. May Allah bless you. Thank you for being so patient with me this afternoon. It's been long. My goodness. It was long. But I'm glad that you stayed. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming. Assalamu alaikum.